Hello friends, welcome back. Actually, we are continuing with the implementation of authentication and authorization. So it is the second part of a role-based security. And if you are not aware with the first part, please watch the first video. This video will cover the custom principal object. So let me show you which part we are going to cover in activity diagram. Okay, we actually studied this activity diagram in the introductory video of authentication and authorization, and in first part I cover the steps up to this. Okay, means we accepted credential, then we created authentication ticket, we encrypted it also, and we add that ticket to our cookie. Now what we are going to do, on our post authenticate event in global.asx file, we are getting the ticket from the cookie. Okay, then we will decrypt it. See, suppose cookie does not exist, in that case again we are allowing user to enter the credential, but if it exists, then we are decrypting its content. Why? Because we have encrypted it. Okay, so to get a proper data we have to decrypt it, then only we can use that data. So after decryption I have to assign that ticket to my principal object. Actually there is a ready-made principal object, but since we want to store more details of our user, we have to create our custom principal class. Okay, so here one more step get added. We have to create our own custom principal class, and then after we have to assign our ticket data to our principal object, and then after we are going to persist this object to our HTTP context, so we can access that user details in any controller, in any action method, as well as in our view. Okay, and then requested URL or the request get executed. So let us see this part practically. Remember this thing, we are going to write a code on post authenticate event in our global.asx file. So let us see this part practically. So in first part, as you can see here, we covered this much. Okay, we validated the credential, this is the first step. Okay, then we created a form authentication ticket, this is the second step. Okay, these two lines are to create a form authentication ticket, and the third line is to encrypt the ticket, and then after next two lines are to store a ticket in cookie. Okay, now as I said, we are going to code on we are going to code on post authenticate request event. Okay, and that event is specified in my global.asx file. So if it is not there, you have to write that event. See, this is the method signature of that event, application underscore post authenticate request. Now when this event get reads, okay, so when any request get executed, prior to that request, means before that request, this event get raised. Okay, and if you mark that event as an if you mark that action method as an authenticated request, in that case, first of all, the post authenticate request event raised, the code under that event get executed, and your request get executed later. And if you are authenticated, then only that action method get executed, otherwise not. So as I said, what we have to do, we have to first of all collect the cookie. Okay, so let us write a code for that. So let us get the cookie that is stored in our request object. So for that I have to say request dot cookies dot get, and then after you have to specify the index or cookie name. Okay, so what is our cookie name? Basically that cookie name is specified while creating a cookie, right? And what name is we specified? This is the name of our cookie, forms authentication dot forms cookie name. Okay, and in that video I told you that you can specify any name, say XYZ, PQR, anything. So I just use this default name given by this form authentication class. So by the same name I am going to access that cookie. Okay, now this method returns the object of cookie. So here I'll say HTTP cookie, say auth cookie. You can specify again any name. So what this method does, it will get the cookie and it will assign to this object. Now all of you know that cookie get expired after some time, or whatever time specified for it. After that cookie will be expired. So we have to check whether our authentication cookie is null or not. Okay, so with the help of that you can check whether your cookie exists or not by comparing it with null value. So if it is not equal to null, then only we can read the content from the cookie. Okay, so basically our data is in Forms Authentication ticket. Okay, where is our data? Our data is in Form Authentication ticket, and that ticket is a value of our authentication cookie. Okay, so cookie is just a container. Our data is in cookie, which is nothing but our Forms Authentication ticket. So what we will do, we will first of all fetch the value that is stored in our cookie, which is nothing but our ticket, and then after we will decrypt it. So auth cookie dot value will give you a value stored in it, which is nothing but our ticket in decrypted form, sorry, in encrypted form. So what will I do? I'll give call to the decrypt method of form authentication. So forms authentication dot decrypt. Okay, then we provide the value of cookie to decrypt method, and as you can see here, your decrypt method is returning a value of type forms authentication ticket. Look at here. What is the return type? Forms authentication ticket. So let us collect it. So forms authentication ticket, say ticket. Now what is the next step? Now we have to fetch a data that we stored in our ticket, okay, which is in string format. See, look at here. What we did in our login method, basically ticket has much more information, okay, but data is stored in this user data part, okay, which is nothing but our username, name, contact, email, and role name. So now what we are going to do, we are going to fetch that data from the ticket. So let us write a code for that. So your ticket has this user data property, which will give you all the data that we stored in our ticket. Now we know that we store the data in vertical bar separated string. Okay, so let us collect it. Say udata. Okay, I hope you remember. Again switch to our login method. Look at here. How you pass your data? You pass a username, name, contact, email, role name, etc., etc., and you separate it by vertical bar. Okay, now what will I do? I will convert, or I'll create an array of this field. Okay, so we can easily assign it. So basically we got a string here which is vertical bar separated. Now we will convert it into the array. Sorry. So string, let us call it as user data, is equal to udata dot split. We will split it on a vertical bar. Okay, so at 0th position, as we send the information, at 0th position we will get username, then we will get name, then we will get contact, then email, and then after role name. Now what is the next step according to our activity diagram? I have to assign this information, whatever that information is present in my user data array, to my principal object. But as we know that the basic implementation of principal object can hold a name only, we want to store some extra information. Okay, so what we have to do? We have to create our own custom principal object. So for that we have to create a class, and that class will implement IPrincipal interface. So let us create custom principal class. Now for that, what I'm going to do, I'll just add one folder here just for the purpose of separation. Say add new folder, say custom security. Okay, it will contain all the fields related to the custom security, all the classes related to the custom security. Now here I'll add custom principal class. Okay, now see, basically we want to use this class with our current thread, or we want to use this class with our HTTP context. So for that I have to implement IPrincipal interface. What I have to implement? I have to implement IPrincipal interface. Let us add the required namespace first. Okay, I think there is spelling mistake. IPrincipal, right. Now it is in system.security.principal namespace. Okay, now let us implement this interface. So as you can see here, there are two methods. First one is identity. Okay, we already studied in the introductory lecture of authentication and authorization that principal object encapsulates the identity as well as role. Okay, means it can be used for authentication and authorization. See, role is required for authorization and identity is required for authentication. That's why we are implementing IPrincipal. Now here in this class, if you want to store some extra information about the user, you can create a property for that. So let us create a property for that, and then after we will implement this method. So what extra information we want to store? Let us switch to our account controller again. We want to store the name, we want to store contact number, then email, and then after role name. So let us create a property for this. So prop string name, prop string contact, string email, and last one is prop string role name. Okay, so in this way you can store extra information. Now let us implement the rest of the methods. Now let us implement isInRole method first. So this will be useful for authorization. Okay, so while authorization, this role argument will have the required role, whereas this role name property will have the user role value. So what we have to do, if these two values are same, means required role and user role both are same, that means user is authorized, so you will return true. You will return true. Look at here, it is returning Boolean type of value. Otherwise you will return what? False. I hope you got this. While applying the authorization attribute, this property will be useful, and at that time I'll explain it again. Now here identity property will only be read by the user. So I'll just set get, and I'll set part to be private. Okay, and here we are going to create a constructor for our custom principal. So let us create a constructor, and this is going to be a parameterized constructor. To that constructor we will pass a username, and what it returns, basically what it does, it will assign this username to its identity, to this identity property. So here I'll say identity is equal to generic identity of username. Okay, so to assign a value to this identity property, okay, what I have to do, I have to pass, or I have to specify the object that has implemented IIdentity interface. So generic identity class has implemented IIdentity interface, that's why I included it. So actually I have to create an object of it. So say new generic identity. Basically if you are using the custom principal object or custom identity. In that case, generic identity class is useful. Okay, now this part is done. Now what is the next step? Whatever we have collected from our authentication ticket, we have to assign it to our custom principal object. So let us create an object of custom principal class. So basically it is in RoleBasedSecurity.custom security. So here I have to include the namespace of that. So using RoleBasedSecurity.custom security namespace, and then after I'll create an object of custom principal class, say my user or say user whatever is equal to new custom principal. Now here, as you know, that we created one constructor, okay, and we didn't specify the default constructor. Our constructor is parameterized, so we have to pass the username, right? So where is our username? Let us switch to our account controller, because there we specified the sequence. So at 0th position is my username, then my name, then contact, then email, and then role name. Remember this sequence because the same sequence will appear in our array. So here at 0th position of our user data. Okay, so here what we did, we split that string in the form of array. So username will appear in the 0th position of our user data array. Then assign the rest of the fields that we created. So my user dot name is equal to name is in user data of 1. Then my user dot contact, it is in 2nd position. Then my user dot email, it is on 3rd position, and last one is role name, it is in user data of 4. Okay, so in this way you can assign a data to your principal object. Just what we have to do, actually while validating or after validating our user, we put that data in the string format, and while putting that string format we follow some sequence. That's why I'm referring this part again and again. Okay, and then we, after collecting a data from form authentication ticket, we split our string on vertical bar. So definitely I'll get an array of string, and at 0th position I'll get username, 1st position will be name, and so on. Okay, now what is the last step? We have to persist this user to our HTTP context. So let us persist it. So HTTP context dot current dot user. See, look at here. What is the type of user? It is IPrincipal, means it will accept any object that has implemented IPrincipal interface. So our my user or custom principal class has implemented IPrincipal interface. So definitely this will work. Okay, so we now assign, or we now persisted our user object to HTTP context. Now it is available to me in any controller, in any action method. Okay, now in next video we will see how to apply authentication and authorization filter. This part is little bit tricky, but if you follow the activity diagram, then definitely it will be easy. Okay, so let us revise again what we did. We just wrote a forms authentication ticket, form authentication request event, and in that what we did, the first step is to get the cookie. If it is not equal to null, then we decrypt that cookie and we fetch the data from our authentication ticket. In our authentication ticket, user data is in the form of vertical bar separated string. So we split our string on this vertical bar and we got the array of our user data. Then since we have some extra fields to be stored, we created custom principal class, and that custom principal class has implemented IPrincipal interface. Okay, here we added our required properties and we implement these two methods. Okay, and then after, our last step is to assign the user data to our HTTP context, or to persist a user to HTTP context. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you have any doubts or comment, you can write it into the comment section. Thank you.